Hello, friends. Welcome back after the Global Coherence Pulse. That was magnificent. Thank you to everybody who participated and made that such an extraordinarily beautiful program. Michelle, Grace, Tammy, and of course, Teresa Collins. So lovely. This day is dedicated to the frequency of love. And we're getting our frequencies across World Unity Week from the first Earth Run, David Gershon and the whole team at Peace on Earth. By 2030, you can play the game, which is really helping to change the world. It's wonderful to be here with you on day 7 of World Unity Week and day 7 of the 99 days of Peace Through Unity. It's been an extraordinary global convergence, and I am super excited about this next conversation we're about to have. We are with the remarkable and the wonderful and the delightful Dr. Jude Caravan, and we are going to be talking all about New Earth Rising in the context of the emergence of the divine child. So firstly, Jude, good evening to you in the United Kingdom. It's wonderful to have you back again in World Unity Week.
Ben, it's wonderful to be with you and all our wonderful community as we link up and lift up together through World Unity Week.
Absolutely. And this linking up and lifting up, I know, is something, Jude, that you're tremendously passionate about, an advocate for, and an activist for, to really build upon. Of course, people may know the phrase of Ken Wilber of waking up and growing up. And you have added to that and expanded that with this idea of linking up and lifting up, which I just love. I think it's beautiful. Let us tell our audience a little bit about you, Dr. Jude. Caravan is a cosmologist, futurist, a planetary healer, author, and a member of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle. She's previously one of the most senior international businesswomen in the United Kingdom. Jude has a master's degree in physics from Oxford University, specializing in quantum physics and cosmology, and a PhD in archaeology, researching ancient cosmologies. She has traveled to over 80 countries, worked with wisdom keepers from many traditions, and is a lifelong researcher into the nature of reality. She's the author of 7 books, latterly, and both award-winning and best-selling The Cosmic Hologram from 2017, and pretty much brand new and extraordinary work, The Story of Gaia from 2022. In 2017, she co-founded The Whole World View. Jude, you are an evolutionary leader in every sense of that word, and it's just delightful to be sitting down with you to have this conversation tonight.
Thank you, Ben. And I'm seeing from the folks arriving in the waiting room and being with us, you know, we have this amazing community that we are literally now doing exactly what you're saying. We are linking up and lifting up together in ways that, you know, when you and I first met a few years ago, was just a dream. Now that dream is becoming a reality, is a reality.
Absolutely. Now, it was interesting, Jude, because when we first started discussing the idea of what would you do for a featured event in World Unity Week, and through Irina Morrison, who had done such an extraordinary job of weaving so much of this content together in room 1, we discussed, or I suggested, well, how about, Jude, you do something on the rise of the divine feminine? And you came back straight away and you said, I want to do something on the divine child. And I really thought, well, that's an interesting development and almost a movement and a progression in so many ways. So while we were preparing for this conversation today, I asked you, what's your intention for our discussion today, Jude? What are you hoping to transmit or to communicate through this discussion about the divine child? And why did you choose the divine child in this case, in perhaps instead of the divine feminine?
Well, the unity of our universe expresses itself initially in a differentiation of both an active and a receptive principles. And this is seen through universal wisdom teachings, but we see it throughout our universe. But also when those two active and receptive principles, whether they're in human consciousness or wherever they are, come together, a third can be created, which is inherently creative. And you know, when the masculine and the feminine come together in a sacred marriage, the birth of the divine child, that third attribute, that third impulse, that evolutionary impulse, is an act of love. So what we're realizing as scientists now at the leading edge of science is our entire universe exists and evolves as a unified entity, which is why World Unity Week is such a manifestation of that universal, that existential reality. But now as we come together at this moment of choice, as we can move forward in terms of our conscious evolution, it seems to me that by bringing the attributes of what's often called the divine masculine and the divine feminine together in complementarity, then that act of love, that act of intention, that act of love, that act of consciousness can birth the divine child. That I see as our conscious evolution in moving forward.
Well, that is amazing, Jude. And I know that the concept of wholeness is something that is so close to your heart and so embedded in your work. The whole worldview which you have founded is dedicated to, really enlarging our concept of wholeness. So it would make sense that you would want to include all of the different elements coming together in this way. This is beautiful. So open us up today. What's your sort of opening, scene setting, context making, beginning for this exploration of a new earth rising in the context of the divine child?
Well, for me, a new earth rising is both our own conscious evolution as a species, but also realizing that we are at what I often call the bow wave of our entire universe's evolutionary impulse that began 13.8 billion years ago, not as the first moment of a big bang, but as the first moment of an ongoing big breath. So as space has expanded, as time has flowed forward, our entire universe has been on an evolutionary journey from simplicity to ever greater levels of complexity and individuated self-awareness. And throughout that time, there have been these universal attributes, as I mentioned, of active and receptive principles. But over the last 4 billion years, they've been progressively embodied in that ongoing complexity of our planetary home, Gaia's own emergence. So after all that time and with hundreds of millions of years, where those universal characteristics have been embodied in genders of ever greater complexity of biological organisms, here we are. And within all of us and within our entire universe is that divine spark, is that underlying innate existential divinity of potential manifestation. And so it seems to me, Ben, that we're now at a moment in our evolutionary journey, which is also shared by our universe, because our story is our universe's story. We're at a moment of collective remembering, a collective opportunity to remember who we really are. And in doing so, within us, our consciousness has those attributes. I mean, the ancient Indian tradition, I think, is particularly helpful with this, because it talks about the energetic consciousness of our bodies playing through what's called 3 main nadis, or conduits of consciousness: the Ida, the Pingala, and the Sushumna. And the Ida and the Pingala are that representative of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And they are embodied within us. When we are able to bring them together in complementarity, then the Sushumna is activated. It's called a number of things, but it's activated within us. It's that divine spark that then flares into flame, that flares into evolutionary potential. And it's done so for a very long time in our human story. But that has been the journey of mystics, of adepts, of sages, of great teachers. It's now for all of us. Every one of us can awaken the divine child within us. And it's vital that we do, because when we do, that's the moment, that's the potential, that's our potentiality to say yes to the invitation of the universe to consciously evolve. And that is new Earth rising, because we share it with our planetary home, with all our brothers and sisters, and beyond. You know, our entire solar family, our entire galactic family, our entire universal family is all part of this new Earth rising and this evolutionary impulse.
Oh, it's so beautiful, Jude, and it feels so resonant and so real and so true. You know, it's interesting. In a few hours from now, in the plenary later this evening, is the sacred marriage. This is convened by Gary Melkin and his speakers like Matthew Fox and others that are coming. But that plenary is the sacred marriage, unifying the divine feminine and masculine to co-create the new earth. And what's fascinating to me is that it's completely independent of this conversation that arose on this day devoted to love, that there is something here in the field that we are now approaching a readiness or a ripening, where we are so ready to embrace exactly what you are highlighting here, which is the complementary and the balance and the wholeness of bringing these different energies together in relational unity. And so I wonder, you know, what does that say about the nature of our universe? How do you think, you know, this conversation of the sacred marriage or the divine child, which are obviously, you know, part of the same process, part of the one process, what would you say, Jude, how does that reflect the unity of our universe?
Well, as you know, Ben, for many, many years, I've experienced from childhood, you know, I've walked between worlds. So I've experienced our universe as existing and evolving as a unified entity, as a non-locally unified entity, multidimensionally. So not just at this realm of what we see around us, but many other realms of intelligence. So what now is happening, and I think this is so exciting, is that scientific breakthroughs at all scales of existence, numerous fields of research, are coming into a clarity of an understanding that the appearance of our universe, its energy, its matter, its space, its time, is not its most fundamental nature. Instead, its appearance arises from deeper levels of causation and universe and cosmic intelligence. And so our universe exists and evolves as a unified entity, as I was mentioning earlier. So its unity, though, is not uniformity. I remember us having this conversation years ago and saying it's not unity in uniformity, it's unity in diversity. But even beyond unity in diversity, it's unity in belonging, because each of us are microcosmic co-creators of that universal whole, where mind and consciousness aren't something we have. They're what we and the whole world are, where unity is not an aspiration. As one of my other dear friends, Dr. Joni Carley, says, it's our existential reality, where unity, as another dear friend, Dr. Julie Krull, says, unity is real. It's not an ideal, it's real. So we are now coming to a moment, we are at a threshold where this leading edge science, with this understanding of an innately informed, meaningfully, purposefully informed, existential and evolving universe, is converging with universal wisdom teachings. So it's those universal wisdom teachings that have told us for millennia, such as the I Ching, which says, in the beginning is the one becomes two, the two becomes three, and from the 3, 10,000 things are born. That is that sacred trinity. We're taught about it in the deeper Gnostic, mystical teachings of all the religions, which is why trinities are so pervasive. Whether it's ancient Egypt, whether it's in mystical Christianity, whether it's, you know, in so many wisdom teachings, we're told that when the one becomes the differentiated two, and when the two differentiations come together in a resolution, in a complementarity, in a sacred marriage, the third is born. And from that third, the creativity of the whole world is unleashed, is nurtured, is celebrated. And it seems to me that that's our point of conscious evolutionary potential now. But it's also a remembering, because our old paradigm of understanding ourselves has been one of separation and materiality. And this is now completely not just being turned on its head, but being healed.
I just love that, Jude. And I love that, what you bring to this is not just an understanding of the physics, but also you are an archaeologist by training, and your PhD is in really ancient cosmologies. And you talk a lot about how these wisdom traditions, like you just referenced the I Ching, and we know that this movement that we're all connected to here in World Unity Week and everything that's emerging is draws heavily upon indigenous wisdom and spiritual traditions that go back tens of the elevated consciousness of those teachings and those traditions. So I'm interested to ask you, Jude, where did we lose it? How did we go from cultures and traditions which had a deep understanding of wholeness and inclusion and belonging, as you say, and the interconnectedness of everything, to this separation idea of domination and trying to become have power over others? At what point, in your own research and understanding, now, of course, we're bringing the science and the spirituality back together, and you're such a great leader in that. But along the way, we sort of lost the plot somewhere. So what's your explanation for that?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say that I'm saying and sharing this without blame or shame. One of the things that I've come to appreciate in our universe is that everything in existence has meaning. And it may be difficult to ascertain what that meaning is, and it may be very challenging in that respect. But I look back around 2,500 years, and at that time, there were a number of world teachers that came into incarnation. Lao Tzu, the Buddha, the earliest teachings of the Judaic tradition, leading on to the Christian tradition, leading on to the Islamic tradition, of course, indigenous teachings all the way through. But it's come to be known, the last 2,500 years has come to be known as the axial age, because it really changed our relationship with ourselves, with each other, with our planetary home and the world. And it really took forward a progressive individuation, whereas up till that point and progressively going further back, what we sort of have from our archaeology, from our prehistory, are perceptions of communities that perhaps lived in far more in ways that we would now recognize from our indigenous brothers and sisters. But that was the way of life for the far great story of humanity to 2,500 years ago or so. But that axial age was bringing forward the potentiality for us to realize our own individuation. And it was a journey that, eventually became more and more a journey of separation rather than differentiation. But it seems to me that it's still a discovery, a journey of discovery progressively, because one of the things that came forward 400 years ago was the scientific method. And the person who brought that forward was a gentleman called Francis Bacon that some of our community may know. But he, I feel, has been given a bad rap because he's known as the father of science, and some see science as you say, taking us away from this understanding that we're part of the web of life and that we're microcosms of the whole world. But I don't feel that his intention was to do that, because the deeper I look into his writings, which are in Latin, and I had to study Latin as a girl, and I'm thinking, my goodness, it's coming useful eventually. But his original writings were in Latin. And what I can perceive in them is that he brought forward the methods that we now call science, empirical methods of exploration and discovery, because in his time, the understanding of the world had become a perspective of superstition, very much controlled by the church. And he wanted to free that ongoing discovery of who we are. And then thus he brought forward this method. But in his writings, he says that he didn't bring this to peripheralize or put away the divine. It was to reveal the divine at deeper and deeper levels and grander levels. And so with all that we've been through the last 400 years, with that journey into a sense of perhaps separation and loneliness, we've nonetheless realized our individuation and our uniqueness in that regard. But now we're at a time, it seems to me, of homecoming, where we are remembering that we're inseparable, where we're realizing through science that we're inseparable. And therefore that new paradigm of science and those discoveries can reconverge with ancient and universal wisdom teachings to reveal the divine spark within all of us, and therefore help birth the divine child as we consciously evolve.
Well, we love the idea of homecoming, Jude, and the essence of homecoming. As you know, last year the theme of World Unity Week was coming home together. We have got the Common Home for Humanity, which has been doing featured events over the last few days, doing amazing work. You know, it really strikes me as interesting that you reference the Trinity, which for a lot of people would come across as a rather Christian idea. And yet in this idea of the divine child, where you would have mother and father and child, I'd be interested to hear your perspective on where do you see this in the other wisdom traditions? Where do you see this in the Eastern wisdom traditions or the indigenous traditions or the other maybe Abrahamic traditions, the embedded idea of the relational centrality of reality, which is based upon really the divine family, and which would then enfranchise all of us as children of God in that sense. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the Trinity outside of the Christian tradition.
Be delighted to. And just to say, you know, I talked about the axial age. That I feel is now coming to its completion. And what is now being birthed with all that we're sharing is what a number of us are referring to as a new and unitive age. We have a unitive narrative now to underpin and frame us from this perspective. So it really is not just a homecoming and a remembering, but it's a great leap forward. You know, I often say, you know, our conscious evolution is actually a conscious revolution because it is so transformational. But in other traditions, I mentioned the I Ching in the beginning, which is Chinese, of course, ancient Chinese. And some of our community may be aware of the yin-yang symbol of that tradition, where we have the sort of the yin and the yang, and within the yin, there is the circle of the yang that comes forward, and within the yang, there is a circle of the yin coming forward. But perhaps may not have noticed, but those two complementarities are not separated, but delineated, differentiated by a wave. And that wave, for me, is the symbol of the wave of the divine child, that creativity, that dynamism of the child when those two are in complementarity. So that's the Chinese tradition. The Indian tradition I mentioned, embodied within ourselves, but as a microcosm, as a fractal of the whole world, of the Ida, the feminine, the Pingala, the masculine, the Shushumna, the child. And in archetypal sense, that is also represented by our moon. Ida is a lunar essence. Our sun, soul, in the Pingala of the masculine essence. And then the child is Gaia. The child is Gaia in this tradition. And then we look before the Christian tradition into ancient Egypt, where we have, it's replete with trinities. And perhaps the most well-known is that of Isis and Osiris and Horus. And in fact, when we look at statues of ancient Egypt, we see Isis with Horus being suckled, very sort of reflective of later depictions of Mother Mary and Jesus. So all through traditions, and as a cosmologist, I see the trinities in atoms, protons, neutrons, and electrons, in electromagnetism, the electric force going one way, the magnetic going another way, and the light the third way. So if magnetic and electric can be considered masculine and feminine, yin and yang, then light is the divine child. So this is very profound and all pervasive throughout our universe and throughout our wisdom teachings.
Oh, Jude, that is extremely enlightening. I love how you relate to the universe as a being. And I think it's really interesting too to bring this richness of the relational aspect of divinity into the conversation in so profound ways, where you can reference, your amazing ability to reference science or the Hindu religion or the Egyptian spiritual traditions or the different, it really is very extraordinary. And I think it's really poignant for many people who might have had negative relationship or negative experiences with religion and have run away from that, and that use the sort of idea of source as God. Yeah. And what's interesting in that is there's nothing wrong with source as God, but it's almost a little bit distinct and a little bit non-relatable. And what does that mean? But what you're presenting is the relational family aspect of our origin, our first source being a triune source, which then makes the entire enterprise based upon a family and based upon the relational aspect. So in that way, that the universe is a family enterprise, and everything that is part of the one family experience, and that's belonging, and that's love, and that's mercy, and all the beautiful human emotions taken to the highest level, which in some ways give it a much richer experience than just a philosophical concept of source. Yeah. And I think that's really important as we move forward to embrace the better aspects of all the different traditions, whether it is the Abrahamic or the Eastern or the indigenous, to really put them first and foremost on a relational basis, that we're all part of the one cosmic loving family.
I love that. And what this also shares with us is such a gift of grace, because for me, mind and consciousness, what this is showing us is that mind and consciousness aren't something we have. They're literally what we in the whole world are. So the entirety of our experience, the multidimensionality of our universe, everything is God, everything is great spirit, everything is great mystery, Allah, whatever we want to refer to it. It's not separate, it's not outside, it's not even just touching it. It is the entirety of our existence. And I love what you're saying, because it is wholly relational, and you played out at all scales of existence and throughout the entire journey, the entire evolutionary and emergent journey and ongoing journey of our universe, because it's flowing through us. The story of our universe is our story. We are in this, Matthew just said something about universal creative play. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And interestingly enough, I've been involved with Whole World View. We've been involved with Anne-Marie and Diana Claire Douglas and others of the Hague Centre for Field Inquiry. And we've been looking at what is the future of activism? What is the future of unitive justice? What is the future of how we can come together? And the divine child has come forward so powerfully as being the embodiment of our potential to evolve to such a unitive understanding, experiencing, and embodying, and thus transforming, and thus new earth rising. Divine Child has been absolutely vital for this.
Well, it seems it's an idea and a concept whose time has come, Jude. And, in the sense of as we stand on the precipice of this new earth rising, we can look at the backdrop of this broadcast and see that individual looking out at Gaia and at the cosmos. And this idea of wholeness and unity and family and relational aspect, that we're not just operating in a mechanistic universe, and we're not even just operating in a universe where there was some creative impulse and now we've just got to figure it out for ourselves. Much more beautiful than that is we're a part of this extraordinary, purposeful, and warm-hearted, beautiful, yes, and wonderful reality, which is personal in so many different ways. I mean, the idea of calling, if it's a child that is the third aspect of this trinity, then we're talking about a deeply personal reality, yes, almost where personality is inherent in the entire thing, and the way you relate to the universe and the cosmos, Jude, and the way you relate to Gaia herself is deeply personal. So I wonder, as we, sit on this precipice and look out at Gaia and this new earth rising, what would you say is, why is this understanding so important now?
Because I think it holds the opportunity for our future. Because what it's offering us is an opportunity to bring together all that we are, to remember who we really are. And in doing that, the child is naturally born. As I said right at the beginning, it's an act of love. When we open our hearts to each other, with each other, then we become like children anyway. But when we do that as a community, when we do that through World Unity Week, when we do that through 99 days of radical collaboration, which is innately relational, then we're naturally embodying and creating the emergence of the divine child. So for me, it's fundamental for us to not only survive as a species, but to thrive as a species, to heal our relationship with our planetary home, our beloved Gaia, and her sentience, to attune with and align with, attune to and align with the evolutionary impulse of the universe. Because what this will call of us, as you mentioned, Ben, our paradigm has been one of mechanistic separation. And that's a paradigm that goes back to 19th century science. It doesn't take account of any real science, foundational science of the 20th century, let alone, the amazing and breakthrough discoveries of the last few years of an innately informed and holographically manifested universe where the whole is embodied in each part. Again, according to ancient wisdom, but we're finding that as cosmologists and scientists, we're discovering that. But it seems to me that the divine child is central to our realizing and recognizing this, which means that then we can come together as we need to do if we are to serve transformational change in the world. And that's why I think within the constellational work that Anne-Marie, Diana Claire and the Hague Centre and us at Whole Worldview have been doing together, the divine child and these are blind constellations. These aren't constellations that we've suddenly decided, let's see what the divine child is doing. These are blind constellations where the divine child, the field of consciousness itself, has informed us of the fundamental presence and role of the divine child at this pivotal time. And, this collective moment of our collective moment of choice.
Thank you, Jude. That is richly beautiful. And it reminds me, also the emergence of the holo movement and the unitive narrative and all of these different aspects, which are in some ways inspired by science, but science with a deeply mystical perspective, going back to David Bohm and the great work that you and others have done with the unitive narrative of the interconnectedness of everything. And in contradistinction to, I suppose, the journey, the evolutionary journey of religion, which has been a little bit inherently, there's a select group that believe a certain way, and you either belong to that or you don't. And if you don't, then you're outside of that elect and saved kind of community. But if the origin of reality, if the cause of reality is a divine family, what is that? What are the implications for who belongs in that, Jude? Who's in and who's out?
We're all included. Everyone belongs. I mean, this is what feels so vital. You know, as a cosmologist, there is our entire universe. It meaningfully exists and purposefully evolves as a non-locally unified entity. There is nothing that is excluded from that in that regard. And as you say, everything is in relationship with everything else. So although we talk a lot about its unity and diversity and in relation to ourselves, this goes beyond that. It goes even beyond unity and inclusion to unity and belonging. And I don't know about you or anyone else here, but when I was a kid, I was always the last to be chosen for the netball team, probably because I was the shortest, but you know, nonetheless. And so I was always waiting to be invited. Our universe has extended that invitation from the very beginning. We don't need to wait to be invited. We belong. And I think it's such a really profound shift in how we see ourselves and the world, because we can feel that safety. We can feel that I can be authentically who I am. And what's coming forward is that each and everything in existence, which of course means each and every one of us, has inherent meaning and innate purpose.
Absolutely. Purpose is such a fundamental part of all of this. So beautifully expressed, Jude. Thank you so much for bringing this wisdom. It feels incredibly timely at this point to have a message of radical, utter inclusion, not just from a philosophical concept, but from the heart of the divine reality that we are all loved and that we are all love inherently. That just feels like without that realization, then the new earth cannot be fully awakened and rise to its fullest potential. We're celebrating love today. And in many scriptures, they say God is love. And so if we are from that, then we are that. And to embody that and to be that and to move towards that in step by step feels like an essential component of the new earth rising. So this is a fascinating and a wonderful and a rich and a warm-hearted conversation that I think is a boon for all of us and a salve for many hurts and many wounds as we realize anew our connection to the whole, our connection to mother, father, and child together in this wonderful cosmic family.
Absolutely. And I think it might have been Dinah Claire put in the chat that the children being born now, they remember. They remember that they are divine child. So it's up to each and every one of us to nurture that. You know, going back generations, when I was walking between worlds, when I was a child in this wonderful, grand, whole world perspective, I didn't share what I was finding with anyone, but I suspect if I had, and it wouldn't have been my mum, but I suspect possibly my teachers, certainly my community, my friends, would have been derogatory about that. They'd have peripheralized that. And so many folks get in touch with me saying their children, you know, are realized, you know, they know this. What can I do? And I say, love them, nurture them. Yeah, just let them know that they belong, you know, and help them then to move forward because they are our future. And if we can help them to do that, as well as everything else we're doing, because they're already coming into their earth walk with this knowingness.
I can't help but think of the early Christian community who talked about the good news, Jude, and which got translated as the gospel. And along the way, that got kind of distorted as different things and various things. But this idea that we are all children of the divine, I do feel that is the real truest meaning of the good news. We have Susan Taylor, who's here in the room. Susan has got her hand up and has been patiently wanting to come in here and join this conversation. Susan, welcome.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Jude. We meet again. Well, what? It occurs to me, something that I hadn't really put together before, but I think it could be useful. When you're talking about the Trinity, there's, I think, another way to look at that. And I'm thinking about three particular examples in the Hebrew alphabet. Not that I really know the Hebrew alphabet, but I know that it's Aleph, which is everything, A. B is bait, which is resistance, and that produces what comes next. So then another example is the Hegelian dialectic. Thesis, the way it is, antithesis, these are patterns, that keep repeating and get us forward. So thesis is the way it is, antithesis is resistance, all the things that don't work and don't fit in the way it is, that finally create a revolution in thesis, antithesis, synthesis.
Exactly.
And then that's the new thesis from which antithesis and synthesis. It's the way we evolve. It has resistance in it. It's not all peace and love, but resistance is what makes it move. And one more example is Prigogine. He got a Nobel Prize for theory of dissipative structures, I think it's called, where, I think it was chemistry, I'm not sure, but you have a liquid or everything is in chemistry, and things don't fit, things don't fit in it, and enough things that don't fit in the way it is causes it to revolutionize again into the next beginning,
Exactly.
So I just wanted to introduce that idea. It's not so much we got divine women and divine men producing divine children, but what's the process inside that makes it happen? And I think it's full of resistance. It's not bad. It is. It can be bad.
I never said it.
Now.
Absolutely.
But
I agree with you.
The way we move.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the point. But the Trinities are so powerful, Suzanne, aren't they? Because as you say, it goes back to the original I Ching idea of the one differentiates the two. Of the two, there is inevitable tension, whichever way. But when you resolve them into the third, then you get that movement forward. So I love that. Thank you for sort of expanding that sort of sense of it. But you're right, it plays out through the whole universe at all scales.
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Jude, for that reflection as well. Tension is a part of the process of the dynamic. Yeah. I mean, without the centrifugal force and gravity being in tension, we would collapse into the sun. So it's really important to, the tension holds the whole constellation. Is beautiful terminology from Diane and Diane Claire and Anna Marie, as you were saying before. But it's the constellation of how things hold together in attraction and in that tension, which is so important, Jude. And there's a beautiful comment from Susan that thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, of course, going back to the philosopher Immanuel Kant. But there are so many, the trilogy, the trinity of past and present and future is another one. There are so many we could have fun with. Jude, I want to take a moment just to spontaneously bring in someone who, I think many of us consider a religious and a spiritual and a scientific genius, who is weaving so many different things together, which is your dear friend and my dear friend, Dr. Kurt Johnson. But I'd like, just as we begin to close here today on the divine child, it feels wholly appropriate, Kurt, to bring you in here for your own reflections on what you've heard from Jude today and anything else you'd like to share.
Well, it's a very interesting coincidence because Jude and Doug King and I are working on a book precisely about this, and we meet every Friday morning. So our meeting was a number of hours ago. And the elements of that book are simply the elements that Jude referenced, that where the global worldview seems to be going, and one that would actually serve the whole planet in a climate of love, is this understanding of the entire heritage of the wisdom traditions in all the world's religions. And I'll give some examples about the trinity of those in a minute, because it's very some simple ones that'll be very meaningful to people. But then how that's also reflected in exactness with the current understanding of cosmology. But the reason we've brought Doug in is because he's an expert on Christianity and the biblical narrative, and his understanding that the journey of the prophetic voice in the Christian tradition has been exactly toward this profound understanding of all of these dimensions working in concert. And that the biblical narrative, you know, in the sense of being an anthropomorphic story and all that, is not a journey in nonsense. It's a journey in coherence. It's a part of the journey of the global coherence, as Jude said, as Bacon said, that's evolving toward this deeper comprehension of the divine in all of its aspects. So the time has come for everyone understanding that view, and that's actually one reason the three of us got together and said, let's put our eggs in the basket and really see what we can do with that comprehensive understanding. So that's been a wonderful journey for us. The thing I wanted to say about this Trinity thing, and it's so easy, is that if anybody here in the room, if you just take a pen and put a dot on a page, and that's you, and you put another dot next to it, and that's a beloved or your beloved, and you draw a circle around those two dots, which is your relationship, immediately the third dimension has arisen. Immediately the third dimension, which is the relationship and the love in that relationship, emerges. So there are so many places in the wisdom traditions where that emerges in an overarching fashion. I'm in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says to Source, where could I go and not be within you? How many times have I been comforted, even when I was in ICU in a near death, with just understanding that, where could I go and not be within you? And then you're immediately understanding this, comforted by this innate oneness, which is also there. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. If you have Father as a dot, Son as a dot, but the circle around is the Holy Spirit. That's Paul Tillich's dialectical view of the Trinity, reflecting what Susan said about Hegel and the dialectic. So immediately that third dimension is there. When you read a poem, there's the poem, the reader, and the new experience of that poem. When you look at a painting, there's you, the painting, and then the circle between you, which is the experience of that together. So if you really ask what that circle is in any one of those contexts, it's love itself, it's caring. And what's interesting is where we seem to be going in a global worldview that will work is that we understand that everything is a loop of caring. Everything is a loop of this mirror of who we all are, and this understanding and recognition of who we all are in that loop of care and loving. So the other project that we're a part of with your friend Victoria Friedman and Jude and Bob Atkinson and Rihanna Eisler is these children's books.
Wow.
And what's the mantra is the eyes of care, that the children are looking with the eyes of care. And when you do that, what do? You're bringing things to yourself. And of course, isn't that interesting what the Christian gospel says, that is Source bringing everything to itself. And that's actually the holographic universe, is Source bringing everything to itself. So the coherence here is amazing. And just by chance, I wanted to jump on this and hear what Jude said. And then Ben sent me a note, can I bring you one? And I said, I guess I don't look too tired. So
you look great.
Yeah. So it's just wonderful. So thanks for the moment, and let's just celebrate all that together.
Absolutely. And thanks for everything you're doing, Kurt. You know, bless you.
Well, as we close this, Jude, thank you for your inspiration and your convening this extraordinary conversation. It feels so rich and valuable. We are in the context of a new earth arising, and today's theme of love. How do you feel this is all manifesting, Dr. Jude Carvin, as we close this conversation today? What's your sense of how it's all coming into being? Kurt talks about the synchronicity of this moment, the conversations that you're in that are converging, the conversation we'll have in a couple of hours at the plenary about the divine marriage. Yes. There seems to be an extraordinary cosmic convergence that we are living into right now, right here, together as one. What's your sense of how that is arising?
Well, I remember conversations a few years ago where if somebody used the word love, everybody looked a little bit embarrassed. And I now see senior business people speaking of love. I see politicians speaking of love. I see so much realization that love is the reality of the whole world. So the more that we can share that with each other, in words, in everything we do, and I think World Unity Week embodies love. I think, I talk about role models and I talk about soul models. And it seems to me that when we open our hearts in love, in whatever we do and however we do it, then we move from being a role model to being a soul model.
Well, beautiful. Let me give a couple of plugs. Kurt mentioned Doug King. Tomorrow there's a fascinating conversation with Doug King and Patrick Carolan about the integral theology for a new earth, which is going to be extremely relevant to the conversation we've been having today. Also, there is a live stream following this immediately on the One Stream and the different social media platforms, which is Business Technology Consciousness. And you'll find Jude Caravan speaking there as well. So we're going to replay that in its entirety with an intergenerational conversation. Lee Singer, Linda Bjork, Laurie Kemp, Mariana Marong, Tamara Moore, and Dr. Jude Caravan. Here in the room, we're going to have something very special starting in just a few minutes, which is open space technology, convened by the one and only John Raymer. And the framing question for today, so stay with us. The framing question for today is, what does it take to move a movement of movements? To move a movement of movements, which seems to be the topical conversation. It's been wonderful to be here with you, Jude. We love you, and we look up to you, your extraordinary ability to bridge the different spheres of ancient wisdom, science, spirituality, current culture, and business, and all the different aspects that you're connected to. You are the universe embodied as a whole person in so many ways. So we are super, super grateful to be with you in this conversation and in this journey of becoming. Bless you and thank you for this extraordinary conversation.
Thank and bless you, Ben. And it's been wonderful to be together with everyone today, as always. Thank you.